I find myself doing this too. I unlock my phone just to take a quick look, open a social network, start watching a video, then another, and when I realize it, 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes even more, have passed. And the most curious thing is that at that moment, it seems completely harmless. It's just an interval, just a pause, just a rest. But when the day ends, there's a strange feeling, as if time has passed, but almost nothing has really been built. And it's not about guilt, nor about judgment. It's about noticing a pattern that's happening to practically everyone today. We live surrounded by stimuli, by information, by content that grabs our attention all the time. And without realizing it, we enter an automatic mode where consuming becomes much easier than creating. And this has an explanation that goes beyond willpower. Your brain has literally been trained for this. Every time you consume quick content, short videos, endless feeds, notifications, your brain receives small doses of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter linked to reward. But there's an important detail. This reward comes effortlessly. And when the brain learns that it can feel good without expending energy, it begins to prefer this path. Creating something, on the other hand, requires more. It requires focus, it requires time, it requires overcoming that initial feeling of resistance. And that's exactly why, in the beginning, creating seems more difficult. Not because you can't, but because your brain hasn't yet associated it with an immediate reward. But here's the point that completely changes the game. This can be trained. Just as your brain learned to consume easily, it can also learn to create consistently. And the first step to this isn't cutting everything off at once, nor trying to become a different person overnight. It's about starting to make small, intelligent changes. One of the simplest and most powerful is to create a basic rule. Whenever you consume something that adds value to you, you transform that into some form of creation. It could be writing down an insight, recording an audio explaining what you understood, noting down an idea, sharing a point in your own words. This already starts to change your position. You stop being just a spectator and become an active participant. Another very practical technique is working with what is called friction reduction. Today, everything around you is optimized to facilitate consumption. Your cell phone is always nearby, apps are a touch away, everything has been designed to be quick and easy. So to create, you need to reverse that. Make the environment more favorable for production. For example, if you want to write more, leave a notepad open. If you want to record, have the camera ready. If you want to study, have the material accessible. It seems simple, but this reduces initial resistance, because often the problem isn't the task itself, it's the beginning of it. There is also a mental behavior that few people realize, but that has a great influence. The brain tends to avoid anything that is not clearly defined. When you think, I need to create something, that's too vague. And everything that is vague generates doubt, and doubt generates procrastination. Now, when you define something specific, like, I'm going to write 5 lines, or I'm going to record a 1-minute video, things change. It becomes clear, actionable, and this drastically reduces the chance of procrastination. That's why small goals work so well in the beginning, because they take the pressure off perfection and focus on action. And speaking of perfection, that's one of the biggest blocks for those who want to start creating. The idea that you need to be ready, you need to be good, you need to do something relevant right away. But that doesn't exist in practice. Everyone starts imperfect. The difference is that some people accept this and continue, while others get stuck waiting for a level they haven't yet built. And here comes a very important mindset shift. In the beginning, you're not creating for others. You're creating to train your own mind. It's an internal process before it becomes external. Another point that helps a lot is defining a creation ritual, not depending on willpower, but on routine. Choosing a time of day when you know you're going to sit down and produce something, even if it's small. This creates consistency. Consistency creates identity. Over time, you stop being someone who tries to create and become someone who creates naturally, because the brain begins to recognize it as a pattern. And patterns are powerful. They work even when you're not motivated. And there's a detail that makes a big difference in this process. Learning to tolerate the initial discomfort, because it will always exist. Those first few minutes before starting, that feeling of not knowing where to go, that urge to open another tab, that's part of it. It's not a sign that you can't. It's just the brain trying. Go back to what's easier. And when you go through this a few times, something changes. What once seemed difficult starts to feel more natural. And what once seemed natural, like consuming all the time, begins to lose its power. A strategy that can greatly accelerate this transition is to use consumption intentionally. Instead of consuming randomly, you start consuming with a goal. For example, you watch something already thinking, what can I get out of this? This activates a different part of the brain, a more analytical one. And when you transform that into action right afterward, you create a positive cycle. Consume, process, create. And the more you repeat this cycle, the stronger it becomes. Over time, something interesting starts to happen. You begin to have more clarity because creating organizes thought. When you write, speak, or structure an idea, you stop having everything jumbled in your head. And this doesn't just impact what you produce. It impacts how you think, how you decide, how you position yourself in life. Creating isn't just about content, it's about inner building. Ultimately, it's not about stopping consumption completely. Consumption can be useful, it can inspire, it can teach, but it needs to have a different role. It can't be the final destination, it needs to be the starting point. Because true transformation happens when you take what you've absorbed and transform it into something of your own. Even if small, even if simple, even if imperfect. That's what builds true skill, awareness, and evolution.